Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Tuesday, February 27th monthly meeting of the Board of Education. I would like to start with a roll call to introduce those of you who might be with us for the first time to know who's sitting up at the table. I will start with myself. I'm Deborah Shute. I am the chair. Thej Singh, our vice chair.
Present, Deb. Thank you.
Jeff Fleischman, our secretary.
Present, thank you.
Lynn Katz.
I'm present, thank you, Deb.
Sarah Thompson.
Here, thank you.
Nicole Russo.
Present, thank you.
Suzanne Zakaris cannot join us this evening. Chris Campbell.
Present, thank you.
And Ramesh Kendapilli.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. And as far as our administrators, Dr. Carnamola, our superintendent.
Here, thank you.
Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Giannini.
Here, thank you.
Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Medic.
Present, thank you.
Our business manager, Ms. Russo.
Present, thank you.
And our executive assistant to the superintendent and board clerk, Ms. Sardinskis.
Present.
Thank you. If you would all rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. I miss doing that in person. Last month we were online, so it's always much better when we do it together. I'd like to start our meetings by reading the mission statement. It reminds all of us why we are sitting at this table together and the work that guides us. Our mission is to inspire in each student a joy and a passion for learning, a commitment to excellence, personal integrity, and social responsibility. I always love that this comes right before our recognition piece because I think it's a perfect segue into the students and the staff that we recognize. So I would like to call forward, do you want me to call him forward, Dr. Carmela? Is that okay?
Mr. Dodona, yeah, sure.
Okay, so Mr. Dodona, or do you want me to call the student forward?
Dodona.
Okay, Mr. Dodona, come on forward if you wouldn't mind, and tell us about Cameron Craft, please.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all. Good to be here. Cameron, so I've been working, I had no? Is that working? Okay. All right. So I had the pleasure of working with Cameron Craft for my engineering first level course. Cameron decided to, with a little bit of help, take the course at the honors section. And in my courses, students that take the courses at the honors section have to do a quarterly project. So the first project, he made a safety sign for the lab using all of our computer programs that we have that he learned throughout the semester, use some of our laser technology in the room, and so putting to use all the wonderful technology that we have in the lab. So the second semester project, I was approached by Mr. Giannini about creating some signs for central office. So I could think of nobody better than Cameron to work on this. So the project was, if you've ever been to central office, there's some old signs that don't necessarily represent who's in those offices. And so we met about what signs needed to be redone, drafted a list of those, and then Cameron took it upon himself to create templates for all of those in CAD in our AutoCAD program. So he came up with all the templates for those, designed the signs for each one of the new offices, and then the other part of it too is he had to figure out all of the material that needed to be cut for it. So we did demo cuts for it. He had to do some material calculations, figure out how much material we were going to need for it, and then he submitted to me exactly what we needed. We were able to order that, and then we started working on the signs, and Cameron's been doing a great job on it. So Cameron's to be commended for his work that he's put in, his dedication to it, his precision that he's put in, and really applying the principles that he's applied throughout the semester with me. And I'm going to call him out on something else he told me the other day. So he's been working on a car project with Dad, right? And he applied some of his AutoCAD techniques. They're welding up a frame for it, correct? And so what he did was he drew up the plans using AutoCAD, and then they're going to print out a large-scale version of that and then use that as a guide to actually weld up the frame of the car. So it was incredible that he's applying the skills certainly in class for things that are happening at the school, but then to see it happening outside of class, for a personal project, nothing brings me greater joy as a teacher to see that. So that's certainly the currency that we deal with. So I'd love to hear from Cameron. He's done a great job on this and look forward to continue working with him.
Thank you. Mr. Dodona, I just wanted to add in, as you know, we met with Cameron, came over, saw the work in progress, actually, again, not long ago. And I don't know if Mr. G realized it until the time we were here, but I didn't realize it until we came and saw Cameron, that besides the fact that he took this project on for us, he continued because the project wasn't finished. He's not even in the course anymore. So Cameron has been coming and working on this after school quite a bit to be able to finish this up for us on his own time, when certainly a young person could be doing any number of other things. So just wanted to commend you also for that, and for the time and the commitment that you put into doing it for us. We really appreciate. We could have put this out to a sign company or something to do, but when we figured out that we might be able to do this in-house, and even better, have a student do it, we were thrilled. And I think you have an example of what the signs look like that you can maybe stand up and show us. And I promised you only a tiny bit of embarrassment so that the board and everyone else here can see what it is we're talking about that you've designed and printed for us.
So we wanted to be conservative with our material, so this is one of the old signs that we did a test with. So you can see that it was the pupil services one, and then using Cameron's template, we re-lasered over one of the new signs on there. So just to kind of give a side-by-side comparison of it. So it came out really nice, and we'll be working to print out all the final versions to be hung up at central office.
Thank you. Thank you, Cameron.
Don't get too comfortable yet, Cameron. First,
This is the part I told you about.
I know. I can't let you sit without acknowledging you. We are so proud of you. Thank you for taking the time to do this. Not only did you do it starting as a student, but to commit your own personal time to this. That's huge for your character building, and I think it shows who you already are and who you're growing to be. So thank you for being committed to seeing it all the way through. That matters. That's a good skill to have throughout your life. And the fact that you are so precise in how you're using the technology and able to adapt to outside with your home life, I'm really excited for you, because I think this is something you're enjoying. So maybe this is something you'll continue to pursue. So what I'd like is if we could have a picture with you, if you wouldn't mind. We have a certificate. First, let us shake your hand. And then after we shake your hand, we're going to have you come over this way. And Mom and Dad, if you want to take a picture, you're welcome to come up and do so. And then, as I always say afterward, we won't be offended if you want to excuse yourselves, because we understand this is the best part of the meeting for you guys. So Cameron, come on forward so we can shake your hand.
This
way. Yes. All right. Who should we look at, Chris?
We have one rule here, and that's, tell us who we're looking at.
Christine, give me one,
Okay.
please.
Stephanie?
I love both Mom and Dad.
I love it.
Thank you. All right, excellent. I can't wait to see the signs when they're all set. All right, now we move on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the Board of Education regular monthly meeting minutes of January 16th, 2024? Anyone?
So moved.
Okay, Chris. And do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Yes, 8-0. Next is communication from the public. Do we have anyone who was planning on speaking this evening? All right, thank you. Now, moving on to items of information and proposals, we just have our wonderful student rep, Lillian Pang, with us this evening. Nick is unable to join us, so Lillian is going to do double duty, and then she's excused to work on calculus afterwards, so go ahead.
The second quarter wrapped up, and the high school had an 8th grade elective showcase night in late January. So the Black Student Union has honored the legacy and contributions of African Americans to our nation's history by making morning announcements celebrating African American icons. And the East Asian Club celebrated their first ever Lunar New Year event. The Literary Arts Club hosted an open mic night. Former Senator Chris Dodd came in today, actually, and spoke about his book, Letters from Nuremberg, which were letters from his father explaining about the Nuremberg trials, and it really gave people a lot of insight. And, you know, as we remember the victims of the Holocaust, especially in modern day America, just to keep this history with us and to always consider those who have been affected. Intramural basketball tournaments have entered their postseason playoffs, so they're competing for the title now. And Avon High School's squash team won the national championship. Girls indoor track placed third at Class M states, and For the Love of the Game happened in mid-February. That was varsity athletes and mixed ability athletes playing together. Rhapsody, which is Avon High School's a cappella group, did their annual Singing Valentines and raised over $300 for an RBS student battling cancer. And Circles Club raised approximately $500 to purchase period products to be donated. And Diversity Week, run by Avon Voices for Equity, will be running in the first week of March, and people are going to be able to present from everything from environmental sustainability to recognizing internalized racism. So we hope that these presentations for students by students will continue to help our community become more inclusive and informed. For AMS, the Arioso Choir sang at the Wolfpack game on February 9th. They had a Super Bowl food drive from February 5th to 9th, and AMS student artworks have been displayed at the library since February 1st, and they're going to be taken down on February 29th, so get over there while you can. For TBS, they had their choir, orchestra, and band concerts, and they are still preparing for the Battle of the Books competition in mid-March. PGS, February 7th was World Read Aloud Day. On Valentine's Day, they celebrated with a fancy dress-up extravaganza where students wore their special outfits. There were no school days on February 19th and 20th due to President's Day recess. A general PTO meeting was held in the cafeteria on February 8th, and the school is going to hold a Boosterthon dance party on February 29th. And Roaring Brook School is going to put on a performance of Finding Nemo in March. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. You're perfectly allowed to sneak your way out. Thank you so much, hon. We appreciate you taking the time, but being studious as well. All right, next we have our financial report with Ms. Russo.
Good evening. This evening, we're going over financials ending January 31st, 2024. We have some variances in our administrative line as we welcome Mrs. Cleveland to interim principal at Roaring Brook and saw the departure of Mr. Rakewitz. In our certified salaries, we had some positive balances for unfilled stipend positions and some FMLA leaves. Some of those leaves resulted in an increase in the negative balance in the teacher sub-instruction line as we hire some long-term subs for those leaves. You'll see that variance being cleared on budget transfer 2024038, which is listed on your consent agenda. We had some other variances due to encumbrance timing and transfers. In non-certified salaries, our nurses had worked some extra hours as they attended field trips with our students and worked through their lunches. And you'll see those small transfers for those variances on 2024038 as well. Our custodians and maintainers, as we have some leaves for some staff movement as well, interim positions have been hired to fill those leaves, and you'll see some transfers to cover those variances as those personnel moved around. Our paraeducators, we continue to see those needs rise for our students with individual education plans. So we did have to add some additional FTEs for preschool and one-to-one student needs. And those we discussed when we went over the budget last month at the January meeting. So budget transfer 2024038 included some savings we had in lines to cover those deficits that we just discussed. In other expenses, you'll see on the financial reports our HVAC repair lines has some significant deficits. They are due to a reclassification. We pulled all the HVAC repairs out of our general repairs and maintenance lines and identified them by school on an HVAC only line. As we saw the retirement of Mr. Jennings, who was our HVAC maintainer. We're tracking those costs better so we can evaluate both the routine and the repair costs that are associated with HVAC repairs. We also had a rise in just general repairs as everything costs just a little bit more to fix, and everything just gets a little bit older every year. So, our capital plan tends to try to address those things as we have some of those repairs at the middle school and the roof here at the high school. Some number of items hope we get through the budget process and we can address those repairs in the summer. In tuition, our final cost for our magnet school tuition, our adult ed programs are just a little bit higher than budgeted. Our transfer 2024039 is clearing those balances with some savings in another line. Safety supplies, we had some replacement batteries for our radios, which are very important to our staff to make sure we have a radio for emergencies. And we installed a visitor management hardware system at the central office like you see at all the other buildings so that our visitors also check in before they enter central office. One item I want to bring up to the board's attention is our negative balances at our through our nutrition services program. As everyone knows this year, or may not know, breakfast is free for everyone. We're happy for that, and that the state and the federal government are helping us offset those costs by grants to fulfill those. But our lunches are not free for all. They're free for our students that qualify for free or reduced lunch. They're free for them. So there is no reduced this year. It's just all free for those students who qualify, who have either been directly certified through Husky or another state or federal program, or have submitted a free and reduced application. We've seen a decrease in the number of students actually handing in the applications because there's been so much confusion. Was it free, not free over the last few years? We've tried to get the messaging out, so I encourage everyone to help us with that messaging, and the principals have been including some messaging throughout the year with their newsletters. But currently, as of today, I checked it when I sat down this evening, our negative balance is $19,697.61. That is something that the board will be liable, the board and the district will be liable to cover at the end of the year to replenish that account. So we're encouraging families, we're reaching out to them. We've sent invoices, we send emails, we send text. We're going to start phone calls in the next month to families to encourage them to hopefully replenish their accounts using My School Bucks to send in payments, or if they think they may qualify, to please hand in a free and reduced application. We want to help those families in need. They just have to turn the paperwork in. So I want to let the board know, and I'll keep you updated as we address financials every month.
Thank you.
In special education, we did see,
So,
oh, I'm sorry,
is that total similar to previous years, or is that?
No.
unprecedented.
Okay.
It is a statewide issue. It's been in the current, we
Yes.
talked about it during the meeting, so it's not only Avon that's facing it, but this is irregular.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Okay. In special education, we are continuing to see increased student needs, again, in our audiological services, behavioral technical services, and independent evaluations. And you'll see some of those charges being offset on 2024039 as well, covering those deficit lines. So we ended the month with $3.5 million unencumbered, or 5.34% of our budget, compared to the year prior of just over $4 million and 6.24% unencumbered. And we can tie that directly to special education tuition. The remaining balance we had unencumbered at this point last year versus the remaining balance this year.
Thank you. Are there any questions by other board members? Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to committee reports, curriculum and professional practices. Lynn? Sorry.
Hi, yes, we met on February 13th. Part of our meeting, we discussed the professional learning plan for this current year, including the required and optional opportunities for all staff, certified and non-certified. And a shout out to the team of individuals in our district who make this happen. It's an incredible menu. It's incredible opportunities for our professionals. Of course, Mr. Giannini and Jody Krasansky, Elizabeth Ferry, Tiffany Fox, and all of the curriculum specialists. They work really hard, and it was a great opportunity for the committee to learn even more than than what we knew before. So we discussed a new novel we're going to be talking about later, Rebecca. It's not a new novel, it's actually a classic, for the 12th grade UConn Early College Experience course, and a new textbook for the 8th grade Social Studies class. And our next meeting, is May 21st. May, wow, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. All right, for finance, that would be me. We have the benefit of just having gone through everything with Ms. Russo, so I appreciate you explaining all the transfers that were discussed as well as the summary. I will also note that under the consent calendar, we have not only the transfers, but a generous donation from the high school PTO to the high school to supplement for multiple opportunities for students. And so we are very grateful to them for that. We'll be voting on that later in the meeting. The next meeting for finance will be on March 12th. And it's canceled because we don't have enough agenda items. Okay, I'm glad we just said that. Yes, we already said that. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I put it on my calendar, but forgot to
Deb,
say it.
can I ask a quick question about the
course.
finance minutes? The budget freeze, we've talked about budget freezes before, and I'm just wondering if this is a different kind of budget freeze from the soft budget freeze. Is now the time to talk, to ask her?
Our audience members are probably going to disagree with me, but it is still what I would call a soft freeze. Those expenses that are directly tied to student curriculum, directly tied to a student experience, we discuss and have all been approved. Those who may not qualify under those parameters, I have discussed a little bit more in depth and may or may not have approved. Well, we're hoping once we get on the other side of winter and we know where our gas and electric land and our utilities, if we still have savings in those, then I think we can reevaluate.
Thank you. We appreciate your diligence. Thank you. Next is negotiations in Suzanne's place. I will speak to the fact that the committee is just at the beginning stages of working with our custodians and maintainers, as well as beginning with our paras, interventionists, and nutrition services. So we're just getting started there. Policy, Thage.
So we met for the first time in 2024 on January 30th, and many of those policies from that meeting are on the agenda for tonight. The next meeting that was scheduled for March 5th, and which is next Tuesday, has been rescheduled. So more to come.
All right, thank you. Capital Region Education Council, Chris. Is it green? There you
Can
go.
you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
There was not a meeting for this month. There was a forum at the Capitol. Breakfast was there, which was not bad. There was over 50 superintendents. Dr. C was there. We had a lot of state reps, senators. Most of the convo was on the funding for magnet schools, as well as the importance of a diverse faculty and board members. It was great. Then the next meeting will be March 20th.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, moving along, the chair update. If you remember back in December when we met in person, part of our discussion had to do with the ECS funding. So Dr. Carnamola and I had been working with the reps to try to find a meeting time for us to have that discussion. So we did finally have a meeting with Reps Curry and Cavros DeGraw, as well as Senator Seminara, to discuss what the situation was for Avon in particular. You, as board members, have received a couple different emails that have spoken to the information that was discussed at that time, but I just wanted to be clear that we did take the time to reach out to the legislators that work in our favor and share our concerns in moving forward on that. Also, I just want to thank our administrators for submitting your newsletters. I really enjoy reading what's going on in your schools. You're doing a great job. I'm very proud of everything that's happening there. Just makes us feel like we're involved. So spring is coming, and I hate to say that too much out loud, but I really believe it. It was pretty mild out there, so we're getting there, guys. So thank you very much. And now I will turn it to Dr. Carnamola for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. We'll start tonight with the hiring report from Mr. Medic.
Good evening, everyone. As you can see in the hiring report, much of this is the personnel actions that we've taken on based on some of the descriptions that Mrs. Russo shared in her financial report. We've had we've had to cover several medical leaves for either custodians or teachers with either long-term substitutes or interim positions. In addition, we've had to hire several additional paraeducators for some students who have service needs in IEPs, and we continue at this point of the year to see both new hires and resignations, mostly in our non-certified positions. Over the next several weeks, our administrative team will begin planning for and beginning the process of our 2024-2025 staffing. So after the groundhog came up, that's when it was our time to start preparing for next year as well. And that's the hiring report for this evening.
Thank you. On the enrollment report, it's a bit different from the previous month, as you can see, up 8 students from 2023, same time in 2023, but still holding steady overall. And we continue to take in kindergarten registrations for the fall. And we continue to also consider what pre-K looks like at present in terms of sizes and student needs, and also how we can continue to plan for that next year, including, as I mentioned, I think at the last meeting, the survey that we have sent out to try to gather more information about what other students, what siblings we may have at home and so on that are coming for pre-K, because as you know, that has also been growing. So we will update you when we're more sure of what our numbers look like, which honestly probably won't be for quite some time, because we work hard to get kindergarten registration started early. You've seen it probably in front of the firehouse. They're asking, put it on the sign and so on. It's going out through the library. It's going out through us. It's in numerous places, but it will continue to change as parents that already live in town get the message to register, but also that move into town between now and the beginning of the school year. Yep.
So as of right now, we have 127 kids registered for kindergarten? Am I reading this right?
In current year, is that what you're saying?
Oh, that's for the current year.
Right.
I'm sorry.
These are only the current year, yes.
Okay. Sorry.
I'm just mentioning moving forward,
Okay.
that's where we are, yep. Because as you can see, our kindergarten classes this year already are fairly large. So we're at 6 sections at Pine Grove, which is busting at the seams, and with an average class size of more than 21, which means some have 21, some have 22, and at Roaring Brook, we've got 5 sections with an average size of 21. So it's something that we've had to continue to monitor throughout the year, and hopefully as we go into next year, we'll be able to continue to maintain the numbers the same way, because at Pine Grove in particular, as you know, we're out of space for kindergarten. Any other questions about that? So just a few pieces on the strategic plan update side. We've continued with our math pilot program that we discussed previously. Our members of the committee continue to go out, visit other schools, watch implementation of the 2 different programs that our teachers here have selected to pilot. We haven't landed that plane yet as in terms of what the recommendation from that committee will be, but again, just wanted to thank Teaching and Learning Office and the teachers at the schools that are doing the pilot programming, because they've taken on a lot of responsibility in trying to determine what the best program is and materials will be moving forward to teach elementary math. So look forward to that and having that conversation at a Curriculum and Professional Practices Committee once we start moving further on the recommendations, and then finally at the board meeting. I think many of you probably already saw this, and there was a news segment on it. Fox 61 came out and covered it for us also. I think I sent that out. Our Stop the Bleed training that we have been doing district-wide with the assistance of a team of medical professionals that is led by one of our resident parents, who happens to also be a physician, who had helped us in volunteering her time and getting other volunteers to come along. So we have been moving school to school. The goal still remains to have the training done at all of the schools and at central office before the school year is over. We might have to make a few tweaks to that because of the change in the professional development day that we have as a result of voting, which I'll talk about in a second, but that's moving forward, and we're happy to see that. It's been going very well and very well received. Our administrative team, as you know, also does our professional learning both separately and together. Just this week was our time together again to engage in planning, review of data, and/or professional learning together as we do every month. This month, we spent quite a bit of time talking about the use of data, our data management, and our new Performance Matters platform. So thanks to Elizabeth Ferry, Cynthia Fivelson came out also from central office, and we worked through quite a bit of what the program can do, and we're excited about that moving forward. We'll be able to show you some demonstrations of that, I think, sooner than later also. It's been already very helpful to us to be able to have data disaggregated in so many ways quickly. Bridges program we've spoken about previously. It's underway. It's going well. We'll update you about that again as we move forward, but our students have been meeting from the high school and the elementary schools and having a good time of it, reading together and doing other activities to foster positive school climate, get to know each other, and so forth, the mentors and the mentees. Mr. Giannini continues, thank you again, something else, helping to lead in the district with Mr. Sturm on the Thompson Brook self-study committee that we put together this year to review current practices related to scheduling and programming as a whole at Thompson Brook. As you know, it's a 5-6 school, so that can look very different at times like an elementary school, at times like a middle school, and the committee is working through possible recommendations for changes there and/or what to keep the same. And so those meetings have been continuing. I'm grateful to the faculty and staff that have been helping with that also. Thank you. Another kind of iron we have in the fire, so to speak, that we'll have some further recommendations on before the end of the school year. In terms of just general updates, you already know this, but wanted to make sure that I said it publicly. We needed to make a change to this school year's calendar to accommodate the primary election voting. There was a change at the Connecticut legislature that moved the date of primary voting earlier in the state of Connecticut. I believe, from what I understand, that is to help to encourage more participation in that primary voting rather than waiting until later. So that change has impacted us because it's not feasible entirely to run school while you also have voting going on at 3 of the locations, between the security, the space that's needed, the parking being very difficult for voters coming in and/or staff. I met with Susan Miles and I actually met with the registrars of voters from the town. They had been looking into trying to perhaps have the voting somewhere besides the schools. That just would not work out for them for a number of reasons. One of which, although they tried, one of which was that notices had already gone out about the election and in the fall. And one of the regulations in statute is that wherever the primary is held, the actual election has to be held also. So they need the schools in the fall on election day. They need the schools April 2nd. So we are closing school on April 2nd, doing our professional development day that would have been March 15th. So students had March 15th off previously, and now that will be a full day of school for students, and we'll give students the 2nd off instead while voting takes place. It's unfortunate that comes this late, but there wasn't really much other choice with what to do with that, so we had to move forward. Already working on graduation. A reminder that's June 12th. There'll be a few tweaks there, I believe, based on our own feedback from last year and also some changes at the facility at the Bushnell. So more on that when we continue to finalize that. We're surveying folks about numbers of tickets needed, disability seating, and so forth. Right now, that's where we are in the process. And thank you to Dr. Lockhart and the high school staff for working with us very closely on that. And I won't speak too much to this because we've heard some of it already from student rep from Lillian, but we've also been very busy as the building administrators, myself and Susan, working with PTO leadership from all 5 of the schools, because this is a very busy time of year for PTO also, planning a lot of end of year events, wrapping up fundraisers, doing things for staff appreciation. So they have been very, very busy, as you heard tonight, with dances, with luncheons, and they're planning Sycamore Day is moving forward as usual. We are in the early stages of planning some sort of 8th grade celebration for Avon Middle School in conjunction with the PTO. So more on that when we get a little bit further down the line. We're laughing because it's not a graduation, it's a celebration ceremony. That's what we've been having many conversations about what it looked like. And project graduation is being planned, the car parade here is being planned, and several other activities that the PTO assists in either sponsoring as a whole or helping fund. And that's all I have in terms of big picture updates before the policies.
Are you sure?
Yes, thank you. There's a lot been happening, thank you.
No, that was excellent. Thank you very much. All right, our next part of the meeting is the consent calendar, which we've already spoken to. Does anyone want to make the motion to approve the consent calendar as it stands?
I'll move.
All
So
right.
moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lynn, and then seconded by Jeff. All in favor? Aye. Moves unanimously. 8-0. All right, thank you. We do have an old business item. Last month, we tabled the appointment of the PAC-TAC Advisory Council member, just in the effort of trying to get more information on it. This is a first for the Board of Ed, as far as I know, in many, many years. I'm not sure how far back it goes, if ever. There are 3 people who are appointed to this role in town. The town council appointed 2 of them. The third one is up to the Board of Ed to appoint. So this is actually, from my understanding, I'll let Dr. Carnemola interject if I say anything out of turn or wrong, but we have the benefit of having Nutmeg TV as our public access, and I believe they serve 8 towns. Avon is one of those towns. And so what the rep would do would represent the community in terms of programming and have an ear or a say at the table. So this is someone who has volunteered, Mark Reich, and has been appointed to come to us for official appointment. Does anybody have questions about any of that? All right, hearing none, then I'll make the motion to appoint Mark Reich as the advisory council member to the PAC-TAC. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jeff. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. All right, thank you. Now on to new business. You'll see it's heavy with policy. We will start with the first one. It's 4118.51, employee use of district computer systems and electronic communications. Dr. Carnemola, if you want to give the summary.
Thank you. So as Thage mentioned earlier, we had a policy committee meeting. Many of you as board members were already there to have this conversation and/or saw the minutes, so I'll try not to be redundant, but just for the benefit of being clear about what the changes are. On page 33, if that helps in the packet, it is the first policy that's on the agenda, 4118.51. These are very small updates that are recommended to the model policy from the board council, and it really is just to change a couple of items. You can see that the highlights. It is to add in smartwatches and to change the name of Twitter to X and to add in TikTok when they enumerate the social media sites that are covered under this policy. And that is also in conjunction with an update that was made to the Connecticut General Statutes. Those are the only changes to this policy.
Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none, then Thage, as the chair of the committee, would you like to make the motion?
Sure, Deb. I make a motion to approve the revised policy 4118.51, employee use of district computer systems and electronic communications. Do I have a second?
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, our next item is on page 35, policy 5112.1, admission to public schools at or before age of 5.
So this, as you know, we had a full discussion on at the previous board meeting, because these are changes in statute that have to be implemented by all school districts in Connecticut. So we really had the conversation about this policy at the board meeting before we had the policy in hand. So we discussed this again, but very briefly at the policy committee meeting, because we, again, discussed it here. The short of the matter is that the legislature recommended changes. Connecticut was a state, to be perfectly honest with you, I was unaware that this was the case in terms of the big scheme of America, that we were already in Connecticut starting students at a different age than much of the rest of the country. And so We received change in legislation, some changes to updated state guidelines related to kindergarten, and generally speaking, it changed from you being 5 by January 1st of the year that you start to 5 of September 1st, the year that you start at kindergarten. There are possible exceptions to this. There is a process that we, as you know, have already discussed for what that might look like to identify students that are possibly ready to start at a different time. That is a part of what the state put out in the regulations also for school districts to follow. And this policy is the model policy from Shipman and Goodwin to comply with the new statutes. So there's no highlights because this is an entirely new policy.
Are there any questions? All right, Paige, would you like to make the motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve revised policy 5112, admission to public schools at or before the age of 5. Do I have a second?
A second.
Sarah?
Okay, Sarah, all in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
But just to be clear on the record, it's 5112.1, and we need to say that will be more clear when we discuss the next one, because the numbers are almost
Yes.
the same.
So the next one, 5112, eligibility to attend Avon Public Schools. We didn't have the ability to discuss this in committee, so this is coming straight to us fully as a board. But again, it relates to the policy we just discussed. So Dr. Carnamola.
So in short, this is an existing policy that covers numerous parts of eligibility, mostly related to residency. But as you see on page 36 and in front of you on the screen right now, after we had the policy committee meeting to adopt the new kindergarten age policy required by law, Christine, thank you, Christine, noted when we actually pulled this policy out for another reason, because we're often asked questions about residency, exchange students, and a number of other things that pieces of are in this policy. And as you see right in the first paragraph, it says September. So we did not want there to be confusion between the new policy and the existing policy. It's that one word that we need to change from January to September. Is it possible that there are other parts of this policy that may need to be reviewed again since we last did it? Yes, but right now, we just need to make sure that the two of these policies are consistent. So on page 36, it is changing January to September to be consistent with the new law. On page 39, it is changing January to September. I think that's the last spot, yes. And then there are changes, as you see on page 41, for the legal references, because again, the statutes have changed. So the statutes referenced in this policy have been updated by board council.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Paige, would you like to make the motion?
I make a motion to approve the revised policy 5112, eligibility to attend Avon Public Schools. Do I have a second?
Second
Thank
by
you, Lynn.
Lynn, all in favor? Aye. Ramesh, okay. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is 5131.71, student use of district's computer systems and internet safety, page 43.
So as with many policies that are in effect that affect both students and employees, this is an example of that. There's oftentimes mirrored policies with language that might be slightly different for an employee in the district than it is for a student in the district. So this is the mirror policy of the one we just looked at for employees and computer use. It simply changes, again, puts in smartwatches. There is one other change, though, that we discussed in the policy committee meeting that it was the policy committee recommended and we all agreed with before it came to the board. If you see on the screen right here what's in blue, that's actually exactly the same language that's in the employee policy. That said, before moving this forward, if we're going to approve this tonight, we need to change the word employees to students, because it's literally exactly the same language. We had a conversation in the policy committee meeting about if we are notifying employees in that way, what harm does it do to notify parents and students in the same way in this policy? They do see it when they sign off on these policies online, but why not put it in the policy and be clear about it here was basically the conversation that we had. So if you would like to move this policy forward, because there's only the one other change, with the recommended policy committee change, just make the motion to do it and change, knowing that we are making a change from the word employee to student.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff. Yes.
I just have a
Yes,
question.
sorry. There- In the same paragraph, there are two spots where it says employee, yes.
In terms of the personal privacy, in terms of students, is this for just school equipment, or is this personal equipment connected to our Wi-Fi system?
Both. So if you are using our equipment, this policy applies. If you are connected to our Wi-Fi, it is possible, but if you are using your own personal equipment, you are usually on the guest network. In
So
other words,
if-
our students
so
connect to our secure network through district-owned devices.
So when students connect to the guest network with their personal devices, are they surrendering their personal privacy?
Not entirely, but what I would say about that is that there are, and we had this conversation in the committee also, and in the past, Jeff, when we originally made the updates to this policy. There are things that you can do on our guest network that can certainly be picked up by our security. And when you log in to our
Understand
guest
that.
network, you are clicking a button that says you understand that to be able to get on the network, whether you're a student,
So
an
there's
adult.
some acknowledgement
Yes.
when
You
they
have to-
access.
You've probably done this other places. If you're going to go on public Wi-Fi, there's a box that you check that lets you know that you are signing on to use this guest Wi-Fi, and these are the provisions,
Okay.
which is another reason we thought, let's be clear right on this policy.
Because it's-
with the same.
It's optional to sign on to the guest
Correct.
network, right, with your personal
That's
devices?
right, because every student has an Avon-owned device that's on our secure network, able
Thank
to
you.
access it.
I appreciate the questions.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Paige, would you like to make the motion?
Sure, Deb. I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised policy 5131.71 with the revisions made tonight. Student use of district's computer systems and internet safety as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Nicole. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimously. Next, 5144, student discipline on page 45.
So this is a very dense, large policy, as you know, that has been updated numerous times. Sometimes it's updated more than once, even in a school year, because generally speaking, everything in this policy is connected to the law and/or state regulations and guidelines that the school district has to follow. Student discipline is a very legally centered process. So there's legal definitions that are in it, legal processes related to hearings, and so on. All of that said, none of those are the things we're talking about tonight, because none of those are the updates to this policy. All of those were already in existence, a couple of changes. On the very first page, page 45, you can go back. This, where you see in yellow, this is an update from statute and the state of Connecticut guidelines about considering individual circumstances in each student disciplinary matter, and also implementing, when appropriate, strategies that teach, encourage, and reinforce positive student behavior and do not require engagement with the discipline system. In other words, as we've talked about before in policy and board meetings over the years, more and more the best practice and also what districts are being required to implement is more about restorative practices. It is more about how do we reinforce positive behaviors, teach students as young people not to engage in the possible misconduct that they have or will, and to minimize exclusionary discipline, which is when students are taken out of class or their normal school setting, either in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension. And because that legislation and the directives that were issued by the State Department have changed, again, we are required to put what you see in yellow into the policy, to be clear that that's philosophy of the laws related to student discipline in the state of Connecticut. The other change is back to the computer use systems. They've pretty much been going through every policy that references internet or computer and adding in something to do with artificial intelligence or AI. And this is a definition that has been added in to the policy related to AI. And again, that is something that has been updated at the state level. And all of the rest of the changes, I believe, are to put AI in the requisite places, and they are, again, a recommended cleanup. To be perfectly honest, it seems like they've recommended this be changed to different words more than once, and I understand that that's a result of the changing labels that the legislation uses, but you'll see some other places where it talks about the superintendent or designee or program level administrators or building-based administrators, and that's to make sure that the language in the policy is consistent with some of the updates to the directives and guidelines that we have to follow. There's only a few places where that's the case. You can see them throughout the rest of the policy.
Questions from board members? Go ahead, Ramesh.
Recently, the state has put in the artificial intelligence framework, right? So is there anything coming down the line to the Board of, like the education, the school systems?
Not from the state in this way, except in the legislation related to what would be misuse of artificial intelligence. We, as the school district as a whole, have been working with training and for faculty and staff around what AI is, what different systems are that utilize AI, ChatGPT and so on, how to utilize it for good, basically, in schools, both on the faculty and the staff end. But at this point, that's the extent of what we have been doing. And we haven't been required to do even that, to be honest with you, at this point. But it's moving faster than most of us are. So
Absolutely.
we're trying to be, as ahead of this as you can be in training and so forth. So I expect it to be an iterative process where we continue to see more discussion about it and training related to it, and most likely updates to policies and or regulations about how it can and is used in school districts as a whole in the state.
Yep, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Paige, would you like to make the motion?
Sure, make a motion to approve the revised policy 5144, student discipline.
Do I have a second? Ramesh,
Ramesh.
thank you. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, 5144.4, recess and play-based learning on page 78.
Again, as you know, we are still responding to a very busy legislative session over the past year or so. These, again, are updates required by Connecticut general statutes. You can see them right in the first page of this on page 78, where you see pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 10-2210. Every change that is in here related to recess and ensuring that play-based learning is allowed. You see all on page 80, all of that, if you could, the entire page and the top of the next page, and we discussed this at length in the policy meeting, but all of this comes directly out. If you look that statute up, all of this comes directly out of it, and boards of education are required to adopt these as part of state law. And we, in Avon Public Schools, this hasn't really been an issue. We already had play-based learning, and for anyone who may not know, if you are watching from the public, or basically what we're talking about is allowing students the ability to interact with each other, to play in classrooms. It obviously is centered around elementary school education, but it's because it wasn't recognized in some school districts as a form of instruction or as a form of learning for students, there was a bill introduced that made it a requirement that you do so. We already did so in Avon, so this is in many ways codifying what already was the case in Avon, but was not the case everywhere.
Questions from the board? All right, Paige?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the revised policy 5144.4, recess and play-based learning. Do I have a second?
Okay, I've got Lynn. All in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Our last policy, 6210, parental access to instructional materials on page 82.
Thank you. Again, we already, as you can see, had a policy for the same. It just had not been updated since May of 2016. So in many ways, the district was ahead of the game here also. However, as again you can see, there's a public act and a statute that was recently changed that requires every Board of Education in a public school in Connecticut to adhere to these mandates related to instructional material. Basically, it is to ensure that parents have access to instructional material that is being utilized in class. As you know, we already had gone down the path of publicizing all of our curricula. As it's being written, as it's being drafted, it has been being put online in many school districts. That hasn't been a normal practice, so some of this will be a lot more difficult in other places to implement. We are at 90-ish% of our, maybe more than that as we speak today. I didn't ask him to know this before we got here tonight, but yeah, of our curriculum already being posted online. As you know, we'll talk about it in a moment. We take instructional materials that are considered primary instructional materials through a process. Those are publicly available. And this is to ensure that if a parent or guardian requested those kinds of materials that we've already made public, or another kind of material that may have been used in a classroom, that they are given access to it in reasonable amount of time and circumstances.
Any questions? All right, Paige.
Last one. I make a motion to approve the revised policy 6210, parental access to instructional materials.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Chris. All in favor? Aye, passes unanimously. I know that might seem like a brief conversation, but please know that our packets are very thick, and we do lots of reading and discussing ahead of time in the committee, and then bringing it here. So thank you for minimizing some of that and summarizing it for the rest of the board and the viewing public. That's a lot of work. Now we move on to approval of primary instructional material for social studies, 8th grade textbook.
I just want to add something in, and then I'm going to turn this over to Jess so you can stop listening to me talk tonight. I'll give Jess a chance. Actually, we should not be approving these tonight. We are just shy of the 30-day window that we open them up. So I think Jess kind of discuss where we are generally speaking, but we should wait until the next board meeting to actually approve them, because although we discussed them at the last curriculum and professional practices meeting, it's not, the 30-day window that we opened at that meeting has not quite closed.
So will they go to old business then next month?
Yeah.
Yes, they'll go to old business next month, but we might as well just, if you want to just give the overview of what they were right now.
So, good evening, everyone. Our Curriculum and Professional Development Council, CPDC, met on February 1st. Out of that meeting came 2 recommendations from our staff. If you're not familiar, what occurs at that meeting is staff come forward to make recommendations about instructional materials, textbooks, courses, course changes. The CPDC Council hears those recommendations, votes on them and votes to move them forward to the CPP subcommittee of the board, which then hears those proposals as well, and then that comes forward to the board for final approval. So as Dr. Carnamola mentioned, we're a little ahead of the game this evening, but nonetheless, we can share these two resources with you. They are and will remain in our central office for access for community members who might want to come by and check them out. And we do, from time to time, have members of the community who come. They read the books, they look through the textbooks, look at the resources. Sometimes they even ask us questions, and we welcome that. So they're there as well if you'd like to take a look at them. So again, two recommendations came out. One is a recommendation for a primary instructional material. It's a novel for one of our 12th grade ECE courses, True Crime Then and Now. Sounds like a special you could watch on Netflix, but it's a course here at the high school. And this particular novel will be used in Unit 2, where students are studying the impact of societal concerns of like crime, occurring, kind of modern day crime and how that manifests itself into novels and fictional text of the day. Something we might draw a comparison to if we think about like post 9/11 and the uptick in like terrorist novels and movies and media. Similarly, the students are studying that, kind of impact throughout various time periods. And so while this novel is an oldie, they believe it to be a goodie, and it's something that students would read. And when it comes forward, what that means is that the teacher would use it as a primary resource, so all students would read that novel. It was used previously as a choice book, so students had access to it, but this change would mean that all students taking the course would read this text.
Any questions?
All right. It was voted on and unanimously moved forward to you for consideration. So also up this evening is a new 8th grade textbook, My World, from Savas. And interestingly enough, last year we presented some updated curriculum, 7-12 social studies curriculum, to the Board of Ed for approval. And is not uncommon at that time when we have a new curriculum for our staff to look at our resources, review them, make some decisions about their continued use with our students. And interestingly, at the same time, our current 8th grade textbook was going out of support for their online platform. And so they approached us with some updated materials. We did go through the process to look at what was out there. And did decide in the end that the updated resource, so staying with the same publisher from the same text, made the most sense for us. It's a substantial change in terms of the platform because it really matches their new online platform that students have access to, but the content remains pretty much exactly the same. We joked at CPP, it's beginnings of our nation to 1877, so the content hasn't changed very much, but it's certainly an updated version with a much more robust online platform that really has some nice pieces for differentiation for our students. And so we're bringing that forward, and again, was unanimously voted on and approved by both councils prior to this evening.
Any questions?
All right.
Thank you
Thank you
very
very much.
Appreciate it. All right, so that will be moved to our March meeting. This is our second opportunity for communication from the public, if there's anyone. I don't think so. All right, communication from Avon Board of Education members. Anyone wanting to speak? Go ahead, Lynn.
Just quickly, I had a blast this week because I got to visit Pine Grove School and read to a 4th grade class. I know some of you or others are going to be doing that, and I highly recommend doing it. The students, the 4th graders, I've been in a lot of schools in my life. They are just kind and patient and inquisitive, and they had the best questions and gave me all kinds of book recommendations. So kudos to the administrators at Pine Grove and amazing library media specialist Angela Antonelli. I really highly recommend, if you haven't gone yet, to read aloud to kids. Find a way to do it. It's so much fun.
Very true. Go ahead, Chris.
For the second year, I have volunteered my time at RBS for bingo night.
Oh.
It's a serious deal. Last year, we sold 200 tickets. This year, we had to open it up to 250 because, you know, it's an exclusive event
Yes.
in Avon. The grandparents come in, it's a big deal. So March 8th is bingo night at RBS.
Are you calling numbers?
Oh, yes,
Excellent.
absolutely.
I love that.
Yes.
Very serious.
Oh,
All
yeah.
the numbers
Yeah.
are very serious.
It's no joke.
That's fun. That's excellent. Thank you, Chris. Anyone else?
It is a serious event, I will say that. No, I just wanted to say that, of course, I'm close to RBS because that's where my kids are, but I know that there was a kindness parade that the kindergartners did, and that's just one example of the school climate and the culture and getting out of the classroom and really, you know, integrating into the different grades, and I just thought that that was great and one example of many across the schools. So just know that I'm close to that, but you can see how that carries over throughout the schools. So thanks.
Excellent. Nicole?
So this wasn't planned as the RBS plug day, but if you have not secured your tickets for Finding Nemo Jr., they are on sale and they are selling out quickly. That is March 14th, 15th, and 16th. And they're doing a wonderful job from what I hear throughout my house for the last 2 months. Also, Ariosa did an amazing job at the Wolfpack game, singing the national anthem. So I do want to thank everyone who is really supporting the students in the arts. They're doing a really great job.
We do have fabulous teachers in the arts department, all throughout the district, but I'm really proud that we are so well-rounded in that way. Anyone else? All right, well, that brings us to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Go ahead, Chris. Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Sarah, all in favor? Aye, passed unanimously at 8:07. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night.